Hello. This week in my quantum biology PhD, I had another meeting with yet another theoretical physicist named Andrea, and I had some nerves into the experience, but even though he pushed me a little bit, asking me about spherical harmonics and sort of stuff that came from my modern physics class that I wasn't super confident in after having taken months away from it, I ended up feeling very encouraged by the meeting, and I almost had to clarify that I wasn't supposed to add a third advisor yet because I'm not meant to be fully learning theory at the during the early stages of my PhD, and especially because I went straight from that meeting to a meeting with my supervisors, and I explained to them with a little presentation what I've been up to, including some wet lab work, preparation for wet lab work, including reading health and safety documents, and also there's a laser safety induction as well, things of that nature. And I had a slide about my independent studies in theory. This started a bit of a conversation, and all in all, the end result of the conversation was that they're encouraging me to not be afraid of theory, and they are glad that I have an interest and that I don't have this inherent fear, because I think it's important to be good enough to communicate understand theory enough to communicate with theoretical collaborators, but it's not necessarily necessary to go as far and study it to the depth that's necessary in order to perform actual calculations at an advanced level. I had mixed feelings about this, but I was happy that they at least saw some theory, some value to me, my interest in theory. And I agreed to not seek out a third advisor early on, especially. Additionally, I did do some more wet lab work later in the week. On Tuesday, Alejandro and I performed an overnight inoculation, and I found that it didn't grow the next day. And then I used Alejandro's growth to perform the plasmid purification. And these procedures took way longer than they should have, and it was exhausting, I'll say. But I did maintain a positive attitude because I was excited by my failure to have an opportunity to try it again. Like, I was actually sort of putting my aptitude out there and not necessarily having such an easy time, because there's a quote that I recently heard that ease is more of a threat to success than struggle. That's a paraphrase. And I feel like this felt true in the wet lab, that you don't want to become complacent to things that can go wrong. So it was good to experience them early on. And then when I went to actually do these processes over again, review the protocol and of both the overnight culture and the plasmid purification, I felt relaxed in the lab alone, since I had done it already and I knew exactly what I was trying to accomplish. And I found myself enjoying myself, and I started to realize that this learning process was really worthwhile, and that had only just begun for me in this case. Later on, we had journal club on Friday, yesterday, and I presented my paper on deletions in the green fluorescent protein. Oh, and Callum presented on DNA origami, like to build a Nerf gun, and how the techniques in that process applies to his research, which was quite interesting. But then I looked at the deletion study on wild type EGFP, enhanced green fluorescent protein, because this is the sort of background information that might be useful when doing mutagenic studies in the future. And then later that afternoon, my other colleague, Matt, came and helped me with some theory using a tutorial from a module that he is demonstrating for on quantum physics. And it really opened my eyes to just how rusty I am in calculus, algebra, and even physics concept and problem solving. Just sort of knowing what to do, which steps to take, what the questions sort of are asking. And I really didn't feel like a physicist or at all like a theorist for sure. And my fear of theory started to creep in a little bit. But I felt simultaneously, I felt this excitement for the challenge, because I realized I had a real problem I was grappling with. And this excited me for sort of looking to the road ahead and starting to work on something. Because Matt at lunch had mentioned that there's this type of mathematical framework called the quantum harmonic oscillator in Dirac notation with ladder operators. Now, that's a way of modeling a quantum particle. And this, if I could successfully solve a problem that's formulated with these properties, then that would be sort of a goal potentially to work towards. And I realized that once I started to work towards this, now that I could really focus and recognize that I knew where some of my weaknesses were already stemming from, I could finally take a path that was specific to my strengths and my weaknesses in both the wet lab and while doing theory. And I finally find some new focus that is based in a challenge that excites me. So what I take away from this week is that it's okay to do things that are not necessarily what are expected of you. Just go with what follow your interest and follow your instinct based on what you want, and never stop asking questions, no matter how strange or stupid even you may think they sound. Ask them anyway, because it's the response you'll get will give you much smaller regret than having let the unasked questions build up and the untapped potential for progress and learning in your educational career build up, because that can make you feel stuck when you feel like you can't ask for help, you can't learn, because you're sort of living in a fantasy that you already know what you need to know because you feel like you should. You have to sort of let go of who you think you are. Like, you think you're someone who can just absorb math right away. So when Matt gives you a problem where you're sort of supposed to look at solutions to the Schrodinger equation of a free particle and just understand them immediately, it takes some gritty work to look at those things from a real perspective, depending on who you are. But recognizing that that work has to be done is the first step to actually doing it and achieving what you as a person, as an individual, are capable of. So it was a pretty good week overall, and I'm looking forward to sharing further progress on this path next week in my next video. So keep thinking small, because there's a lot of mystery in the subatomic realm, and don't give up due to simple obstacles. Thanks for watching.